Hey, it's Charlie at Charlie's Flybox, and again, here I am back with a little knowledge drop for the day, and we'll see how much knowledge I've got to spread to you. But let me start off by saying that I am wearing these glasses today because my daughter hates them. Hates my glasses, and I will now just wear them forever because she hates them. So that's for her. That's for the jujube. And with that being said, I'm going to get into talking about the flows on the South Platte and how they're changing lately. And this is not atypical for this time of year. We're all used to fishing Deckers and Cheeseman, and usually 125 CFS is a pretty standard flow down there. As spring rolls around and that reservoir starts to fill, they'll start moving water down to the next reservoir. Those are all, everybody thinks all that water is managed for fishing. It's not managed for fishing at all. It's managed for water management. So they fill one reservoir and they move the water on down to the next one. So they try to keep everything as full as they can. It's a water supply for Denver and so forth. So they're in the business of moving water. So what's happening is as that reservoir gets full, they'll start to up the flow. While we're used to 75, for that matter, 50 to 150 CFS as a standard flow down there, the river is coming up. It's I think the last time we looked, Tuesday, I think it was 270 CFS, and it sounds like Denver Water is going to raise that flow over the next month or so up to as high as 750 CFS, which is obviously a lot more water, and it does change the river. Now, that being said, what it does is it makes everything a little bit deeper and a little bit faster. 300 CFS is where the banks are on the South Platte. If you look at the river when it's at 150 CFS, you see the sandbars on either side. At about 300, it's bank full. So that's really a pretty standard flow. So typically we're used to fishing a pretty low flow. So 300 is a pretty standard flow. That's what the river should run, ideally, I guess, is what we'd say. It's hardly ever at 300, but right now we're just about there. And what happens is that as that water comes up, is it gets a little bit deeper and it gets a little bit faster. That channel is, there's not a whole lot of room for it to spread out. So what you've got to kind of look for is patches of water that have sort of consistent depth of where you might be catching fish. And that might vary day to day. In a really big flow, I'll look really tight to the banks. I'll find a lot of fish sitting tight to the banks. In lower flows, you'd walk up and see fish sitting tight to the bank in pretty still water. In these bigger flows, those fish sitting up next to the bank are probably there to eat. That's a shallow riffle to them now. So all the shallow riffles that you're used to fishing, the places that you went and fished 2 months ago, are not going to fish the same. And that's one of the things that's always kind of driven me nuts over the years is somebody goes down there and they have great luck in these 3 holes and they go fish those 3 holes for the rest of their life with the same method and the same flies and the same leader and the same tippet. And sometimes they catch fish and sometimes they don't. Well, the river varies. So when that flow changes, we're used to in those lower flows fishing 5 and 6X tippet. When those flows change, you don't need 5 and 6X tippet. You don't even want 5 or 6X tippet. Take this and get rid of it. What you want to go to is something that's much heavier. 3X, maybe 4X, but 3X is not too big. I fish a lot of bigger flies in heavier flows. The 3X tippet fishes well on those bigger hooks, and it also gives you a little bit more strength to land those fish in that heavy current. If you've got a size 20 jujubatus on, I'm not saying you can't hook fish on it. I'm not saying fish stop eating that kind of stuff, but your odds of landing them in a 500 CFS flow are much less than if you had a San Juan worm in a size 12 tied to a piece of 3X. Like I say, maybe 4X, sometimes 4X, but typically I'll start, at least to my first fly, just down to 3X. My typical rig would be a 9-foot 3X leader, and I would use a big, giant split shot. That's another thing I see a lot of is everybody starts off with these little teeny tiny split shot number 6s and maybe say, I had to put 4 of them on. Well, 4 6s don't add up anywhere near 1 SSG. I don't know exactly what SSG stands for, but in my mind it's always stood for super, super giant. That's a great big split shot. And I remember days where I fished 5 or 6 of these to get the fly down in heavy currents. You're fishing bigger flies on heavier tippet. It doesn't sink quite as easily, so you need more lead than you think. And you can use lead or tin. Somebody asked me about lead split shot, if they still make it. They still do make it, and lead does sink better than tin. It's not maybe the most earth-friendly thing in the world, so try not to lose it. But lead does sink better. So that's just my opinion on that. You can do with that what you may. But I'll take a big split shot above that tippet knot. And typically, as I go down toward the flies will vary a little bit. Not a huge range of fly patterns that I would put to work. In bigger flows, when the flow first comes up, you'll get a lot of stuff washing out, a lot of bankside stuff coming off the banks. You can get some color to the water, especially down at Deckers and Trumbull. There's a couple creeks that come in there, so that can stain the water a little bit and put some color into it. Typically, Cheeseman's going to stay pretty clear even in the bigger flows. It's not to say it won't get some color, especially after the rock slide a few years ago. It's not to say that it wouldn't get some color, but typically it clears up faster and stays clear better. But in those bigger flows, the flies that I'd go with, my first #1 choice would be a earthworm brown San Juan worm. Size 10 or 12. Really, the hook size doesn't make a huge difference because the worm's about 2.5 inches long or so. 2 inches long, I'd say. But I like a bigger hook so that, again, it just stays stuck in the fish better and works well with that heavy tippet, so I've got a better chance of landing them. And then my first go-to behind that would be a scud, and typically an orange scud. This is a Dorsey's UV scud in orange, and a 10 is not too big. 10, 12, 14. 14 is maybe a little on the small side for me. Those scuds get washed out. The orange scud is just the dead scud. You can certainly fish an olive scud. I've always had better luck on the orange scuds. It seems that they can see those a little bit better, or maybe they're just used to seeing them. A lot of those get washed out. Scuds I have always found kind of live in wood in the river, so I'm theorizing anyway that as those flows come up, that wood gets broken up and those scuds get washed out into the flow. But I've had some of the best days I've ever had fishing the Platte, and I fished a lot of days on the Platte with a San Juan worm and a scud. It's nymphing. I hate to do it, but when you're catching a lot of big, fat, hungry fish, you can get by with it. It ain't dry fly fishing, but it's still pretty damn fun. So that'd be my first choices. Another fly that is really overlooked in higher water, and a lot of people don't know about it, is a crane fly larva. This is a barge crane fly, and there's a lot of different crane flies out these days. Barge crane fly larva, and these look like a big caterpillar. This is a size 8. That is none too big. I've seen them as big as my pinky, and I'm not exaggerating at all. I've seen them as big as a size 4, and honestly, a 2 or bigger if you could even, find something that big. It's a big juicy bug. It's a big bite, and fish really do chew them up. So that's a great fly too. A lot of times, if it's big water and really just coming up where it hasn't settled, a crane fly with a worm behind it, that's a pretty deadly combination. And again, those are on bigger hooks, so you got a better chance of landing the fish on that bigger hook and heavier tippet in that heavy water. Golden stones, there's tons of them, particularly up in the canyon. A 2-bit golden stone is a great option, and you don't have to be small on those. 12 is probably as small as I'd fish. Fairly big golden stone. Again, something that they can see, something that'll stay down. That 2-bit has got 3 beads on it, so it's a fairly heavy fly in and of itself. Same goes for the crane fly, for that matter. It's typically weighted as well, so that adds to your split shot configuration. Leeches are always a good bet up there, even in lower flows. In the bigger flows, they get washed out just like the worms do. I remember years ago, how many fish we caught on San Juan worms, and kind of having the revelation recently that a lot of those San Juan worms probably got eaten as leeches. I like that. This is my own squirrel leech, pine squirrel leech. There's a lot of different leech patterns that you can fish there as well. I like something a little bigger and meatier though, not the little skinny mini leeches. I like something a little bit bigger, a little bit more oomph to it. It's also a fly that you can kind of twitch and hop around a little bit instead of just dead drifting. And it's not to say that you can't catch fish on little beta sniffs. They're still around, especially as those flows level out and stay even. The bug life that lives in the river, that is your typical hatch, is still going on. It's still happening. You'll still see fish. As that flow comes over the top of the dam, that water will warm up a little bit, and that'll get caddis moving. So a catastrophic pupa, a jujubatus, a dark 2-bit hooker. I think this is a black 2-bit in size 18. black or dark olive two-bit hooker, jujubetas. It's not to say you can't catch fish on those. They'll still eat those, especially as that water level evens out a little bit and gets kind of becomes normal for them, rather than on the rise. They'll still eat that little stuff. It's much harder to land fish on that little stuff in those big flows, though. So keep that in mind. You know, if you're just not doing anything, it's not a bad idea to maybe hang a little beta nymph behind a San Juan worm and see how that goes for you. And lastly, don't overlook streamers in these bigger flows. You know, even in that big water, those fish they still got to eat. And, you know, sometimes it's just harder for them to find a spot and kind of get located where they can get you know, it's all new to them too. You know, that flow came up and looks different to you. It looks different to them as well. Now, they do this for a living, so they know how to kind of get the job done, but it does not ever hurt to throw a streamer in situations like that. I like a flashy streamer, this is a gray swim coach or baby swim coach, in any variety of colors, honestly. I'll kind of work through the color variations. A sparkle minnow might be a good fly for that as well. You know, whatever your favorite streamer is, really. You know, if you can, if you've got a good day where you've got overcast skies with that bigger flow, throw a streamer by all means. A little more water over their head, they seem to be a little more comfortable chasing that kind of stuff down. So really, you know, as the flows change and that river gets bigger, it's a different river, but it's still the same place. So you just got to approach it a little bit differently. And it's not just on the Platte. That's on a lot of different rivers. As that flow gets bigger, it pushes fish to the edge. The bugs that are available to the fish tend to be a little bit bigger and get washed out. And the fish tend to be pretty aggressive about eating that kind of stuff. Like I said, I've had great days of fishing big flies like this that is totally atypical for what you'd think on the Platte. So don't be afraid to mix it up a little bit, and don't, even more importantly, probably, don't go and fish the same rig that you've always fished at 100 CFS in the same spots that you fished at 100 CFS when you go down there and it's 500 CFS. There's going to be some variables to it. So that's the best advice I can give you, is different rivers, bigger flow, same old familiar river, but a bigger flow is going to change your approach, change your fly selection, change your rig, the way you set it up, and really where you look for the fish. Think of soft edges, all that water that you're used to fish, you know, that you're used to fishing 18-inch deep riffles at 500 are going to be 3 feet deep and moving very fast. Shoot, they might be 4 feet deep, and they're probably not going to hold fish. You're going to find fish in that shallower stuff, which may be in the parking lot from where you were the last time. So keep that in mind. You're looking for a patch of water that kind of matches what the depth is that they like, but that area is going to be different at 500 CFS than it would be at 100 CFS. So just keep your eyes open and kind of pay attention to different flows and what might be changing on the river. It's not so much that it's an entirely different approach. It's just a bigger scale. There's more water, there's more room for them, and a little bit bigger fly, which never hurts. This is a good time of year to go actually rack up some good numbers and mix things up a little bit. It's not the same old Platte that you've been fishing all the time, and it's sort of a nice reprieve. So that's my advice for the Platte for I guess the next 30, 45 days, something like that, I think is what the flow is coming to. So go down there and give it a try and see what you think. If you have success, come in and tell Max all about it. And if you don't have success, just keep that to yourself. We don't want to hear about it. Thanks for watching.